What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. We are going to be talking about the 2023 SummerSlam pay-per-view coming up this Saturday. We're breaking down the card, talking about what we are interested in, what we're a little bit disappointed in, who we think is going to win all those matches, and all the usual stuff here. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Robert E. Felice.
It's the mid-season finale, and I have a lot to say.
And Callum Wiggins.
Biggest party of the summer. Woo!
This is following our Great American Bash. We don't have the Beach Blast. We don't have Bash at the Beach, but we do have SummerSlam in Detroit with a lot of cars. So I guess that's something. And this is an 8-match card right now. They might add some stuff. I don't know. If they do, they'll probably add it during the next episode of SmackDown. So we won't have a chance to talk about that in the meantime. But we did have Monday Night Raw, which clarified a few things and also clarified a few WTF type things, because I thought they were going to make some additions to this card that they didn't. So we're going to break that down. And as we do, we want you to tell us what your thoughts are. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you're thinking. If you're listening to this outside of YouTube, hop on over to YouTube or post something on the Facebook page or on the page on smarkamoment.com itself, or send a tweet. What are we going to say now that it's X? Send an X? That's dumb.
Post it on X.
Ugh, I hate it. Send a tweet. Screw Elon. And make sure that you kind of chime in with your thoughts in whatever fashion that they are. But as we're going along here with all of that, keep in mind the other things that are happening over there on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed, ring that little notification bell to get those email alerts of when we go live for the post show immediately following SummerSlam on Saturday night. Click on that little thanks button if you want to toss a little spare change our way, or click the join button. Get access to the same things that we get over there on Patreon, like the Darkcast and the Pick Your Poison tier, where you can request something that we can do off on the side outside of the main events that we normally have here and the hot tags and such. If you want us to do like a fan outs table, or if you want us to do another top rope list or whatever it might be. Also pick up some merch on TeePublic and Redbubble. Didn't say it differently this time. And, let's start getting into the SummerSlam card with the thing that we normally break down, and sometimes recently we haven't had an opportunity to talk about matches that aren't on the card, but we definitely can for this one, because we are missing 4 championships and a match that was very clearly going to be on here, and they decided to pivot for some reason. So we have no United States title match. That is happening on, I believe it's not this week's episode of SmackDown, but next week's, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's Santos Escobar against Austin Theory. We'll talk about that when we get down to, next week and all, but that arguably should have been on this card. The men's tag team division is not being represented here. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn not defending the belts again, which is disappointing. They have had pretty much no direction following WrestleMania, because they've just been hovering around the bloodline thing and then feuding with Imperium kind of as like a proxy pseudo extra feud. Now they're sort of kind of feuding with the Judgment Day as an extra feud, but they're just sort of bit players, and Kevin Owens is out with an injury. So no tag team titles, no women's tag team titles either. Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green had won them recently. And of course, this is the state of the women's tag team division all the time. There aren't any tag teams for them to fight.
Correct.
Can you name a single tag team other than them right now?
Casey Catanzaro and Kane Carter.
So there's that one. And then there's, I guess, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn still? Or have they just not been around?
They just haven't been on TV, but that's okay. They still exist.
I'll tell you what they have been doing. They've been playing Havoc with Rob's fantasy too.
What's been going on with that one?
We has both of them, and they haven't been on TV for about.
Yeah, I got fucked. I get fucked with these call-ups and these Roman Reigns title reigns.
Robbed of points coming through again. So we don't have those, but we also don't have Raquel Rodriguez getting her title shot against Rhea Ripley. They are, for some reason, pushing that off too. And they did a whole thing on Monday Night Raw this week where Raquel went after Rhea, and then they had her back in the trainer's room, getting her knee iced, and they were like, kind of, yeah, you're still not cleared to compete. And Adam Pearce told her, as soon as you're cleared, then you'll get your title shot. As far as I'm aware, she's not actually. That's what, yeah, they'll give you a match. It might not necessarily be a title shot, but as far as I'm aware, it's not that she's actually injured, or else they wouldn't have done the brawl thing. So they just flat out were like, oh, well, we've got enough matches on this card. We're going to say, screw it. Which is like, man, Rhea hasn't done pretty much anything, just like the tag team stuff. They have built Rhea's title reign so far as beating Natalya a couple times and then just being on the show. She just stands around and everybody thinks that she's cool, but she doesn't actually defend her belt or wrestle or do anything worthwhile. It's really disappointing.
So that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about here, is the idea that I've been looking at the roster and saying, I'm really struggling here, because if I say the roster and the champions on paper, it sounds like WWE is doing great. Hell, even if you look at what they're actually doing and how they're always touting, they broke this record in this city and that city, it sounds like they're doing great. But if you actually look at the product for like 2 minutes,
yeah, you put it under a microscope,
you can see that they're not actually doing anything. And yes, like Roman's done the most in the last few months that he has in like 3 years, but that's only because they're really ramping up the end of this bloodline story. One way or another, this bloodline Roman thing comes to an end at SummerSlam, even if he wins, and it's just wild to me that, like, yeah, Rollins is world champion. That should be awesome. And Owens and Zayn are tag champions. That should be super fun.
Asuka and Gunther and Rhea, like these great talents.
And Gunther, like, on paper, it sounds like it's really good. But then you look at it and you go, well, Rhea actually hasn't had much of a story for herself since beating Charlotte. It's kind of been Judgment Day is doing this thing, and LWO has Zelina, or Judgment Day is taking over Raw, and since she's the most popular of the group, they're enjoying letting her beat up Wesley and all these other people. There's not a lot that actually feels like there's something going on here. Even like Cody, which we'll get to, they haven't actually done much with him. It's just wild that they have managed to do so much content, make so much content with very little movement at all.
Yeah, I don't really know what to add to that, apart from the fact that they're doing all this and their product hasn't been hotter in the last 5 years than it is right now. It's whatever they are doing, and as Rob has eloquently pointed out, it doesn't seem like they're actually doing that much. It's working with loads and loads and loads of people. Like, literally, you just have to put Roman or Rhea or Dominic on the screen, and people are just glued to it. So, realistically, you're going to get those three on this show. So, really, you don't need anything else other than just have Roman Reigns and a Judgment Day presence on this show, and then you're pretty much good to go with the vast majority of people. It feels like nowadays.
This whole the way that a lot of things are working nowadays in this world doesn't make sense to me, where it's kind of like, what do you mean you're losing more money than ever, but you're making record profits? What do you mean that you're putting out a worse product and you're succeeding more? What do you mean everybody hates you, but your popularity score is higher? Like, it's all opposite day. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna be honest. The way that Callum described that, it made me think, is this not an actual like zeitgeist, but is this the closest that we've gotten to the Attitude Era, where it's just like, yeah, look, if you look at it, they're not doing much, but these characters are fucking over, and everybody wants to see what they're gonna do next.
It could be, and then it could be the type of thing that in a few years everybody thinks that everything was fantastic, because they do that with the Attitude Era. They just forget that, like, that the bloodline thing is each week is the exact same promo. And then they go, man, I remember that Bloodline thing that was so good. The way that, if you really look back at the Attitude Era, you see like, well, Austin did the same thing pretty much every week. And then,
He came out every week and he beat up Vince McMahon. It was just a slightly different way that he beat him up. It's like, oh, this week he's pouring cement in his Corvette, and this week he's putting a fake gun to his head, which is a bang thing, and making McMahon piss his pants. It's like, it's still just Austin beating up McMahon in just different ways every time.
Yeah. And when you condense 3 years worth of that into the memories that you remember the most, that you really enjoyed, then it ends up being like, man, God, that was an amazing time. And when you rewatch it, the way that we're watching these things now, you go, oh, man, I could really do without another segment of Roman and Jay arguing about whether or not they have position in the tribal council or whatever the fuck. So it's yeah, I mean, we can talk about that for days on end, but when it comes to those missing matches and all, I do think that it's a shame that we don't have these on the card, especially because some of them have been ignored for a long enough time that it's sort of like, all right, you got a pattern developing here. Maybe there's something going on with them not really caring about who Rhea fights, and they're just like, well, as long as she shows up and people can gawk at her and call her mommy, that's all that matters. And she comes off more as a valet to me than she does a champion, and that's a shame because I really like Rhea Ripley. Also, though, missing from the card, non-title match, Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. That's not happening here after how many months of building it toward the idea of like, well, you could just get that out of the way here, but we're going to wait. Well, you could just do it here, but we're going to wait. Well, we could just do it here, but we're going to wait because it's all going to at least happen at SummerSlam. And now it's not even going to happen at SummerSlam.
You're not going to get me to complain about making a show shorter. Like, if I can get through SummerSlam in like less than 4 hours, then I'm pretty pleased about that. And what you're telling me, there's going to be a big match or an episode of Raw that I might actually want to check out that they put a little build into. Wow, amazing. Yeah, I think it's absolutely a smart thing to do, to spread out some of your top matches and put some actual matches that you put a fair amount of time and build into on free TV, and save other stuff for the pay-per-view. Like, it's just smart business.
Now, I agree and I disagree, because fundamentally, yeah, you need to draw attention to the pay-per-views and to the TV shows. You can't put everything on the card or else it's going to be a long night. And on top of that, there are some matches on this that I would not want to sacrifice for Becky Lynch versus Trish. For that matter, I didn't want to see Becky and Trish continue this feud going on this long to begin with. I wanted them to just get that out of the way and do that, 3 months ago or something. But it is baffling to me when they build enough things up like this and then they end up just being like, yeah, we kind of realized that we don't want to do it for there. And speaks more to that things haven't changed mentality, because we've had this for the past few years and it's like, well, is this a Vince call, or is this a we can't decide on anything type of call, or is this a we just want to play around and then at the last minute we'll figure something out? And it's not just a WWE thing too. I mean, we could talk about how there's nothing announced for All In. We could talk about that, when it comes down to hot tags or whatever it might be. But that's 5 things missing from this card that in another year or in another booking philosophy, you'd have gotten those matches on here. You'd have had all the titles defended, or you'd have had some more finality to some things ahead of time. Because it's like Rob said, it's the mid-season finale in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I think that they're lacking on some of those things. I think that they're lacking on some gimmicks too. We'll get around to that.
Look, I think part of it that we don't talk about a lot is that the average match time is now 20 minutes plus.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes not even counting with entrances.
And that doesn't need to be the case for every match, so they should really think about that for some of them.
But as far as just to touch real briefly on Becky and Trish, I agree with Callum in terms of building up your TV show. However, I do throw some caution that remember, you guys advocate for 2-night manias thinking, oh, it makes it shorter. No, it doesn't. It just makes 2 nights just as long as the first night was, and I just hope that this is a shorter show and that they are doing it to save time as opposed to here's a 5-hour show and we're just taking 45 minutes for tribal combat.
Or commercials, because remember, we've got way more commercials these days than we ever did. I think if you were to time out the amount of each pay-per-view that ends up being, when I say commercials, I don't mean just like the Peacock ads, which, by the way, it still counts as a commercial if they're running a promo for, Carmelo Hayes, just because you paid for the non-commercial thing. You're paying for a commercial of a WWE thing rather than a commercial for, some fucking healthcare service or something. But the commercials for that, the video packages that rerun what's been happening, the commercials for, oh, by the way, on the next episode of NXT is going to be whatever, or I got a feeling, I wonder if you were to time that all out, if that would be like a half an hour from each pay-per-view, or if it would end up being potentially longer. So if they feel like, okay, well, we need to throw that in there because we need to put a commercial advertising whatever that John Cena movie is, or we need to promote Snickers or something. Yeah, I'd rather them, of course, just cut some of the matches a little bit shorter if that's the case. But we do have 8 matches on this card right now. So let's start getting into some of those. And I guess the thing that we should start off with is the one that's the catch-all for, if we're talking people that aren't on the card and people that might be put in there. There's a SummerSlam Battle Royal. And right now, the only people that have been announced for it, which we don't even know how many people are supposed to be in there. They haven't, as far as I'm aware, they haven't said, like, this is a 20-man Battle Royal, or that this is, X amount of people that are supposed to be involved. It's not like it's like the Royal Rumble where we know that it's 30. All we know so far are LA Knight, Sheamus, Tommaso Ciampa, Shinsuke Nakamura, Otis, and Chad Gable. They're the only confirmed participants. But it can include anybody. You can have Bronson Reed in here. We could have Grayson Waller in here, which is one of my potential picks. We could put in the people that, the champions, like, an Austin Theory or the Santos Escobar, Rey Mysterio. There's tons and tons of people that you can pick from. Is there anybody that stands out to you guys as the winner for here other than LA Knight? Because it seems like it's an LA Knight vessel.
Yeah. And no, I don't mean yeah as in a pun. It's just
yeah.
This seems like a safe bet because it's meaningless. And it doesn't force them to switch up any plans. You can just get a bunch of people to go, yeah. Full disclosure, he is super over. He is super hot. I'm not convinced that he's going to stay that way. I just, I'm very cynical about the way that wrestling fans do this to people. So I think it's better to have him win these low stakes match right now. But the guy's crazy over and he should win something. I hope the winner gets a Slim Jim.
It's hard to predict when you don't know anybody that's basically going to be in the match. And kind of going with basically anyone other than LA Knight at the moment, because LA Knight will probably finish second. You'll get eliminated, and they'll suddenly say, "Oh, it's still part of the plan. Still trying to get him over by having him lose every match."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Part of me thinks they'll give it to Chad Gable because he had a
Bronson Reed is big.
Yeah, Bronson Reed potentially. They could give a win to Chad Gable because he got a good showing against Gunther, and the whole Alpha Academy thing seems to be getting some good reactions on Raw. This could be when Johnny Gargano comes back and you have him win a Battle Royal to try and boost him up immediately, or it's almost like I don't really want to predict who's going to win because they haven't announced anybody outside of those 6 people. Out of those 6 people, I probably would go with like probably Gable would be my pick out of these 6, but yeah, until more names are announced, I don't really feel that confident one way or another.
And those 6, of course, the only reason that they announced them is because they've had like little segments where they've said specifically like Ciampa and Nakamura were talking, and it was like, I'm going to win the Battle Royal. No, I'm going to win the Battle Royal. Same with LA Knight and Sheamus, Chad Gable and Otis. They had a little backstage thing where they mentioned it. You can toss in AJ Styles, Karrion Kross. You can put in Bobby Lashley's doing something with the Street Profits. Maybe they want to put a little bit more focus on that. I think it ultimately comes down to, if it's not LA Knight winning, they want to have LA Knight be the guy who gets eliminated last from a heel that'll get a lot of heat. And I think that would be Grayson Waller. Out of all the heels that are going around right now, there's already a focus on like Damian Priest, and I don't think that they're going to just give this to Dominic. It could, because they're really high up on the Judgment Day right now. So maybe they just come back around to like, yeah, we can only focus on 2 things at a time, everybody. So of course it's going to be that. But, you know, there's more shocking results. Clearly, if they would have gone with like Rick Boogs, who's been MIA for however long, or, you know, Joaquin Wilde's not going to win this, for instance. But depending on what they want coming out of it, it could very well just be, look, we know LA Knight's popular. We want to give him a spot on the card, and we didn't want to set aside some one-on-one feuds, so we figured we'd throw everybody in a battle royal and he could win that. There you go. We get the LA Knight pop. Apologies for the sirens, everybody.
Why is it that he's only able to be involved in sponsored matches?
It does seem to be a regular thing, yeah.
Slim Jim. I think it's a safe bet that he wins. If not him, I'm going to say Bronson.
Bronson's got a really good shot, yeah.
He's big, and, you know, I like when big guys win battle royals. I don't even think Dominic's going to be in here.
Probably not.
Have they said when this match is taking place? Like, is it taking place in the kickoff?
They haven't specified that it's a kickoff thing, but since they haven't been putting anything on the kickoff, I'm assuming that it's just a regular part of the show.
Listen, if this goes on deep in the show, I wouldn't be surprised if Grayson Waller won, and this is where you get The Rock, and then The Rock pieces out because he's not going to fight Roman, you know. But he'll fuck up Grayson Waller because he apparently has time for that.
Do you think that that's going to be a segment on this? Is Grayson Waller affected with The Rock?
I think they can continue to tease it. He's been doing a pretty good job of that, but I don't know.
What about you, Callum? You think there's any chance The Rock pops up here?
I didn't even know that was a possibility.
He's not watching the show.
Yeah, I've never. In full disclosure, I've probably never seen a Grayson Waller effect, so I barely even know what that is. I know it's a talk show, but like,
I mean, it's a talk show. There's nothing else more to it. You know?
Okay. One of the
none of them
better
are anything
takes
different
on that, because at least they give him a set, unlike the Miz, who just says, "Hey, look, it's Miz TV."
Yeah, and they've got the little ticker at the bottom of the screen. Sometimes there's some funny little things on there. They clearly like Grayson Waller, and they want to do things to spotlight him. So if they have something in mind, like they're, you know, maybe going to have this Rock thing, maybe that's one of the reasons why we didn't get some of these matches on the card, because they wanted to carve out 20 minutes for that promo. Or maybe that ends up falling through. Maybe it's not a thing to begin with. Maybe everybody's just speculating over something that's got no chance whatsoever.
Well, that's what I'm full disclosure. That's what the fuck I'm doing. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not banking on that being on the card. I think that Grayson Waller is going to be in the Battle Royal. He's going to eliminate LA Knight. But if they announce that he is not in there, if he's got the Grayson Waller effect, then I'm going full blown LA Knight winning this. And it wouldn't shock me if I'm wrong and they end up just being like, okay, well, Battle Royals don't mean anything, so this is where we're going to bring Odyssey Jones back and he's going to win, and that'll get people interested. Or, you know, maybe they want to do another spotlight thing on Damian Priest outside of the other match, or, you know, I mean, there's certainly tons of different avenues that they could go, because, as Rob said, it doesn't matter. If you win this Battle Royal, you get nothing. It's just a match. So, speaking of just a match, not having any kind of like a, you know, gimmick to it or whatever, but it is one of the main events. So let's bounce around with our 4 main events and kind of, do a regular one and then a main event. Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar has no gimmick attached to it. It's just the 3rd match. And they are trying to treat this as like the most epic thing in the world. That it's like, it's Cody versus Brock 3. Oh, man. This is going to be the end of this feud or whatever. Love Cody. Love Brock. They're going to have a good match. But goddamn, man, you didn't want to pull a trigger on making this a gimmick. It's just another match. I'm disappointed in that.
I'm not fully sold on the idea that it won't be something. Because they'll just go, hey, on the bump, it's going to be no DQ. I just don't think it'll be anything fun at this point.
See, I think if they end up doing any of that kind of stuff, they're going to do the thing where it's not technically one of those, but it they start brawling before the bell rings or something. That to get around it,
I'm feeling rather cynical today, and I apologize, but I'll go first. This has sucked. The story to this has sucked. They had managed to book 5 episodes of Raw on Cody responds to Brock, Brock responds to Cody, Cody responds to Brock, and they're under one roof. Yeah,
the under the one roof thing. I hate that so much. They're in the same building.
They have done nothing, and it's fucking Cody and Lesnar. Like, Lesnar is probably near the end of his run. I think he should be having more fun than he is. I don't like this. And worst of all, they've done nothing with Cody actually being like, hey, I want to win the world title. Outside of interviews that he does himself with people like Sean Ross Sapp. What? Why doesn't this have anything more attached to it? And what was that promo on Raw with the most dramatic music, as if these 2 dudes have been beating each other bloody like they're Shawn and Triple H in 04. They've had 2 matches. They've been pretty paint by numbers. And this isn't even that dramatic.
This wasn't
a no for me.
This wasn't even like Brock cost Cody the match at WrestleMania. He just happened to beat him up the night after. So there's what's this bitter rivalry is you didn't want to be my friend.
It's Cody says that this is a big deal for him because the story they should be telling is Cody's finally at the level where Brock Lesnar is paying attention to him. Because that's the story. The story is, look at me. I went away and came back, and now I'm such a big deal. I get to fight Brock Lesnar. I know it sounds like I'm shitting on Cody. I love Cody Rhodes. But I'm very frustrated with how little they've done here. And I want to know why.
Now, the key here, though, is does he lose because he still needs more adversity?
If he loses here, bro.
Yeah, I will be so pissed off because he has to beat Brock. And I'm going to go Cody Rhodes winning this.
He has to beat Brock Lesnar. Unless they're going to India. He should beat Brock Lesnar, but they could go to India because they just announced that.
I really hope that that's not the case. That they don't just go, the end of this feud, Brock and Cody 3. Man, that's the rubber match. We'll do a 4th. I have to add all that Superstar Spectacle crap to the page too. Forgot about that.
I imagine Cody Rhodes will get the victory here. And yeah, even if it is a singles match, it'll probably be one of the best matches on the show because these 2 can put this kind of match together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but that's because I don't watch the TV.
Yeah, I'm really right now. I'm really feeling you don't watch TV, and I don't blame you for it. But that is how you're able to be a little more optimistic here, because you're right. They can put on a great match if they give them the time to. No more quick fight kind of stuff, and let them actually have a great dramatic match. But
I'm not going to be too pessimistic about anything about this because just as someone who doesn't watch the week to week stuff, I don't think WWE's had a bad pay-per-view since about 2021. So it feels like it feels like they're just pretty much on a roll. So I didn't know that going into a WWE pay-per-view, you're more than likely going to have a good show overall. So, and you can give me Cody versus Brock. Yeah, I'll take Cody versus Brock. Sounds good.
I envy you.
Well, see, having missed those 3 weeks on my end, you would think that, that would make the same sort of difference where it would end up being like, all right, well, I haven't been watching this as much, so I'm not as beaten down. But because this has been going on since the night after WrestleMania, it's like, okay, well, it's still been 4 months of this feud. And we've said it a million times before, but it bears repeating. If you take 4 months of a feud and you can condense it to the best minute and a half video package and go, that's the highlight. And then you go, yeah, but it took 4 months to get 2 minutes worth of material. And you can cut all the rest of it out. That's where the bad thing comes in. And sometimes I think that they need to speed up some of these feuds and they need to just, be fine with having one match or be fine with doing 2 matches back to back and that's the end of it, not making it be some quote unquote epic thing because it just happens to be, quality and quantity are not necessarily the same all the time. And just because something goes on for a long time doesn't mean that it's epic. In the same way that Lawrence of Arabia is a long movie and it's an epic. But not every movie that's 3 hours is an epic. You know what I mean? Lord of the Rings is an epic. That's one of those. But this is a little side note. I'm looking at the Superstar Spectacle thing right now because I was like, I forgot to grab that graphic and put all that on there.
Roman's not on there?
Roman's not on there. That's one thing. But the people that are, Shanky's one of them, which is like, you're just going to pretend like you've given a shit about him because he's
it's a show in India.
And it's like, you're just going to go, remember Shanky, everybody? Hey.
If you don't think that it's Seth versus Jinder, like, come on.
It's just, that's funny to me. But Odyssey Jones is on there. I've just brought him up earlier. It's like, he has been doing fuck all. And yeah, he's right next to Shanky, right next to Ludwig Kaiser, which they've got Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther, but not Giovanni Vinci. So that's another dig at Giovanni Vinci that they keep perpetually being like, and fuck that guy. But also they have Braun Breaker doing a moonsault.
That's hysterical.
Like the focal points of this are Natalya, Becky, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, Rhea Ripley, Matt Riddle, Indus Sher, McIntyre, Rollins, 2 members of Imperium, Odyssey Jones, Shanky, and a moonsaulting Braun Breaker. The fuck is Superstar Spectacle?
It's spectacle, sir.
This is going to be an interesting one. We're going to break that down, a little bit.
Wait, when is that show?
The 8th of September.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's the week after All In? All Out? Right?
Check it all about. It is the... Let's see. So we got the... Payback and All Out potentially on that weekend, and then Superstar Spectacle following.
That's crazy. But yeah, all the more reason that WWE is moving towards these kinds of shows, and really someone like Callum is in the best position because he's just like he said, they haven't had a bad show. I have no reason not to be optimistic, and I'm too in the weeds where I'm like, I want a reason to care about this, like.
So I'm going Cody. What about you guys?
I hope it's Cody.
Yeah, Cody will win.
All right, so that's one of our 4 main events because you know how WWE treats main events.
What's the 4th one?
Well, there's
I know what the other 2 are.
Well, what do you mean? What the other 2? If there's 3?
Well, I know the world title matches are the other 2. What's the 4th?
You've got the 3 world title matches. You got the women's, and you got Rollins, and you got
Don't give me that shit.
Uso.
All right, listen to me. I love Asuka. I love Charlotte Flair. I love Bianca Belair. Don't call that a main event of this pay-per-view.
That's what they're doing. That's the graphic that they went with for like the main graphic on WWE.com for a little
bit. That's silly. Okay.
Before we bounce to that one, let's go to one of the other non-main event, quote unquote, matches that we have, which is Ricochet versus Logan Paul.
It's gonna rule. But this match should kick all the ass. I'm glad Ricochet's on SummerSlam. I'm glad Logan Paul's in a match where he can win and people won't get up in arms about it. I mean, they probably still will because he's Logan Paul, but you know, it's not like he's beating Roman. This rules.
Yep, this match should be like super exciting. Lots of flipping all over the place. A lot of like athletic spots. Like it won't be very psychological in terms of the wrestling, but it'll be pretty much them flying about trying to outdo each other. Yeah, should be a lot of fun to watch and probably kept within like a nice little sub 10-minute package. So, yeah, I'm saying obviously Logan Paul's going to win, but should be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm really glad that they're actually giving this spot to Ricochet because, look, we all know they're not so much giving this to Ricochet as much they're giving it to Logan Paul. Obviously, this match wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for Logan Paul. They wouldn't just have like Ricochet versus Ivar or something. But instead of going with what I thought that they would have gone with, which is, oh, those spots at the Royal Rumble and Money in the Bank are good enough. Now let's move on to something else and give Logan Paul a quote unquote bigger name to work with. And then have like, I don't know, Logan Paul versus Edge or whatever, that they're actually going with the match. And this is one of those instances where this feels like an AEW decision to me, where they're like, no, people want to get this guy versus this guy. Let's actually have them fight in the ring. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm assuming at the very least. They probably have been thinking of ideas for a while now of like cool shit that they can do and flip around and bounce off each other and all. So I'm looking forward for that. I'm already anticipating that at least one or two things might end up going on like my coolest spots of the year potential list. But at the end of the day, Logan Paul is going to win, and he should win because he's been losing most of his things, and you need to give him a win every once in a while to kind of boost him back up. Clearly, he's not going to lose that like featured player persona, but the more that you give him a win, the more that he seems like he could actually win championships, or he can score an upset over, I don't know, like maybe you have him up against Drew McIntyre in the future or something like that. And then it's like, all right, well, you know, Logan Paul doesn't lose every match. Maybe he wins and stuff. And Ricochet, as great as he is, he's not their focal point. So definitely going Logan Paul winning this. And I'm actually looking forward to this more than a lot of other things on this card.
I agree. And I also want to say, you said they weren't giving this to Ricochet. I think they are. I think this is a sign that, hey, Ricochet is a guy that we can trust to put in the ring with a Logan Paul. And I think that this is the closest thing to a WrestleMania moment they've given this guy. So I think that this is a huge moment for him. He is going to lose, but maybe it's the kind of performance, like how there's the report from Sean that Zelina Vega is seen higher in the eyes of people just because she had that fun match at Backlash. This is the kind of performance Ricochet could, you know, elevate his stock, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's certainly not going to do him any harm. That's for sure. I can't imagine that they're going to look at this and go like, yeah, you know, that was a good match and everything, and we're really glad that you could put that together, and now we're firing you. You know what I mean? Like, this might end up being the type of thing that they go, yeah, we really should be doing more with him, and next time that they're coming around to somebody who can win another championship, or for all we know, maybe this continues into next year and they end up giving him Money in the Bank or something like that. I don't think it's going to lead to like, you know, him winning the Royal Rumble or anything like that, but it shouldn't hurt him.
At the very least, even if it leads to him being the next guy to go back down to NXT and like have a good run there, I think he will be shined a spotlight on in coming months because of this.
So all three of us are going Logan Paul, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so let's get to Rob's favorite main event of this. Asuka defending the undisputed, but not actually undisputed, but it says undisputed on it. So we're just going to ignore it until that ends up becoming undisputed, because only this championship gets defended because Rhea Ripley doesn't have her belt on the line ever. Championship against Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair. I would not have gone in this direction whatsoever. I think that Bianca versus Charlotte is a WrestleMania thing, and I don't think it's a smart idea to do this and then come back around to it, if that's their plan, to just be like, well, we set it up a little bit here, then we'll come back to it in another couple of months, because they do like to do this. It's been a thing.
Did you watch what they did with Bianca and Becky Lynch? This is exactly what they did, and they had full-blown singles matches.
Yeah, they do like to do this with the women's championships, and Bianca in particular, where they like having the SummerSlam feud drag out all the way until WrestleMania. So I am firmly setting up this idea in my head of, all right, Charlotte's going to win that belt, and then she's going to drop it to Bianca at WrestleMania. How do we get to that point? And I think the way we get to it is that none of these three win. I think Io cashes in, wins the championship, feuds with Bianca and Asuka and Charlotte and Bayley, for that matter, over the course of the next couple months, loses it eventually to Charlotte. Charlotte eventually loses it to Bianca Mania. So I'm going to go Io Sky actually wins this, rather than any of the three that are in the match.
I'm going to keep it simple and just say Asuka pins Bianca, knocking Bianca out of the picture and allowing Charlotte to eventually beat Asuka, and we will eventually get around to Charlotte Bianca WrestleMania. But I will say,
where do you think Io comes in though?
She could always come in after. I think that they're too itchy to get rid of the women's briefcase sometimes. Let her hold on to it for a year. What's the harm? Bianca's gonna need an opponent after Charlotte at Mania. Why not just let her cash in there? I like your idea, though. I would not be surprised if that's what they actually did. I just think let's spread it out a little bit. But I do want to say, despite my complete objection to this being called the main event, I have said in the past, this is the smartest built thing, because at least all three competitors are like, I want to be the top of the division, which is more than I can say for some of the men. So thumbs up to this, and I hope it's a really good one.
I'm sure the match will be very good. The three people involved. Enough time doing this podcast knows that it teaches you that you just don't bet against Charlotte Flair one way or another. So I'm just gonna say Charlotte wins.
If it's one of these three, I think it's Charlotte. Yeah. If it weren't for the EO Money in the Bank thing, I would be fully just going, all right, Charlotte Flair's going to end up winning this title.
I mean, part of me thinks they won't go with the EO thing on this because they're playing a lot into the briefcase thing with the men's World Heavyweight Championship match. So I just don't think they'll want to cram all of that on one show. I mean, it's not like it's completely out of the question, but I think that they'll try and spread it out a bit more. So EO won't be involved in this one. They'll do something on SmackDown that's involving like her and Bayley and Shotzi and whoever else, and that'll keep them occupied for a little while, and you can just focus on this match.
However, you do have to always take into account, they could always say, for the first time ever, two people cashed in at the same night. That is the thing they like to do.
That is a possibility.
I'm with Callum. I think if anybody's cashing in, it's for the men.
Well, let's talk about that one instead of doing the back and forth, because what the hell, we're on the roll. I don't think Damian Priest is cashing in on the World Heavyweight Championship match, which, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, it's Seth Rollins against Finn Balor. I am very disappointed that they're just doing this. I think it's so dumb. I thought that the build-up to the match at the last pay-per-view was a little lackluster, and then for the build-up for this one to be, I still want another match, and then Rollins going, okay, that's it, is incredibly lazy, and I don't think that they have the chemistry to justify that, to just be like, yeah, but isn't it so good? No, it isn't. They're fine. They're going to put on a fine match. The Damian Priest element of it is like a non-factor to me right now. Either you pull the trigger or you don't. And I don't feel like they're going to have Bálor win and then get cashed in on like some people think. I don't think Priest is going to interfere, cash in, win the title, and like pull a Seth Rollins from Mania. I don't think Seth is going to retain and then get cashed in on by Damian Priest. I think that this is going to be almost a carbon copy of what we saw at Money in the Bank. Damian Priest is going to come out, potentially tease the idea that he will cash in. It's going to lead to some back and forth. Rollins is going to retain and get out of there. And then it's going to be like, didn't you just do this? And somebody's going to be like, yep, and you fucking paid for it and watched it anyway. You know what I mean? I am very low on this. I think it's incredibly lazy.
So I think something is going to happen here. Until I made the joke earlier about they could just do Seth versus Jinder. I've actually just fully been of the idea that somebody from Judgment Day will be World Heavyweight Champion by Monday. Because they love this stable. And it's an easier way to make them the focal point of Raw. Hell, even if they're just champion for until Payback, so that they can go to India and do the Jinder thing or whatever. I think that somebody from Judgment Day is winning here. I'll say Finn Balor just wins because I think that's honestly the option that no one's expecting. But he's had a really good year. This might be the most solid year he's had in terms of consistency. I don't mean that every match has been a banger. I mean that he has been a top guy and in that same spot, if not rising, every month this year. And I feel like that's the first time since he's come on the main roster that that's happened. So I think Finn Balor will win here. And then they'll tease Priest cashing in.
It does need to be said that WWE has very much been in this mentality the past 2 years of putting championships on the same people. Look at the Bloodline. And then look at what's going on right now with Judgment Day. Rhea's champion. Priest has Money in the Bank. They gave Dominic the North American Championship because they couldn't give him the other two mid-card titles. Wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if Finn Balor was also holding the world title so that they could be like, oh, see, look, Judgment Day has everything. They really do run Monday Night Raw.
But if they end up going with Priest so they could do a three-way at Payback, I see that coming too. Because, I just think Judgment Day will have the world title. And this doesn't have to be the end of Seth's run. It could always be a short thing. You know, right now, I know we're all thinking he's probably going to end up fighting Gunther. But, Gunther still has his thing to do. So, right now, we can just play around with this title. And I do think it's time to shake it up a little bit because Rollins has been great. But the way you establish a championship is by having it, let's have it move some hands and really build on the legacy.
Yeah, I absolutely think that they should give Finn Balor the title here. I think that Rollins has been nothing as world champion. I think they gave it to him out of courtesy more than anything else, and the fact that he was getting reactions with the whole everyone singing his entrance theme, and I'm sure people do that. But I think outside of doing that, no one really actually cares that much about Seth Rollins right now. Whereas the Judgment Day are the big act on Raw. They are following in the footsteps of the Bloodline as the next big thing that WWE is probably going to devote a lot of their attention to. So in order to firmly establish that, you've already got Rhea as a champion and Dominic as a champion as well. So I think you need to firmly establish this is the act that you should be paying attention to by giving Finn Balor the championship. You have Damian Priest in the background. It's a good thing to have because it means that you could have someone take down Finn Balor eventually, but then you could immediately have Damian Priest come in and cash in on them and become champion again and just keep it in Judgment Day, and you just have that movement around. So, yeah, I think it's about time they give Finn Balor a run as a proper world champion on the main roster and see what he can do with it. And, yeah, even though a lot of the attention on Judgment Day has been drawing towards Rhea and to Dominic, I think Balor's continued to be consistently well placed, and realistically think they probably shouldn't have had the match last month because that was just an absolute nothing. But ever since then, they've ramped up the Judgment Day even more. It just gets to the point that just give Balor the title. There's no reason for Rollins to have it any longer.
Balor winning would be my least favorite outcome. So I'm hoping that
honest,
that's not the case.
Like, if we're being just genuine, he does deserve to finish his story. That freaking Rollins took everything away from me at SummerSlam. Let him get it back. I think it's time. He went to NXT. He had a bunch of mid-card title reigns that meant nothing. Let's give him the title. I think in the same way that Callum said Seth winning the belt was courtesy because of the reactions he's getting, he should get the championship as a result of how over Judgment Day is as an act right now. I'm not saying he needs to hold it for 1,027 days or whatever the fuck, but he should get it.
There's nobody who could feud with Balor as him with the championship that I would be interested in to watch for the next few months. I would want them to pretty much immediately be like, all right, can we just give the belt to Sami Zayn then? They just have him beat him and then just move on immediately. But I would be okay with Damian Priest winning the championship because I like Damian Priest. I think that he deserves to have that on his record. I think that the cash-in's more interesting. But I ultimately just think Rollins is going to come out of here holding the title. That's my pick.
Where do you see him going?
I mean, Payback is Payback. It's not an event that really matters.
There's still Payback and Fastlane before Survivor Series.
And the Superstar Spectacle thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Jinder Mahal thing at the Superstar Spectacle could be a thing because it's it is a possibility. You can't rule that out. There is the potential of, you would assume that they're going to go back to Saudi Arabia too before Survivor Series. They usually do around late October, early November or so. Because I mean, Fastlane's October 7th. I think that there's a good chance that it might be around Halloween that they end up doing the Crown Jewel thing. Survivor Series is November 25th, so maybe they do November 4th or something like that. I think we're going to get Crown Jewel as well, but I think that you've got Drew McIntyre could turn heel. Maybe that's the game plan. Seth versus Drew down the line. Maybe they build up Shinsuke enough that Shinsuke can get a one shot. Or maybe they continue on with this Judgment Day thing for another 4 fucking months for all I know. I do think that, not to get too far ahead, but I do think that Gunther is going to end up winning that title. And I do think that he is going to beat the Honky Tonk Man's record. So we got to go at least till September or something for that.
It's the day of Spectacle.
I thought it was the 6th.
I thought it was the 8th.
It might be somewhere in that range though. Which I kind of don't anticipate that they're going to have Superstar Spectacle is going to be when somebody beats Gunther necessarily, but it might be the case. I don't know. The one thing that we weren't talking about a few months ago, we were talking about WrestleMania and the idea of maybe they do Rollins versus Gunther, and then maybe they have Cody versus Roman and all that. Now we have the writer's strike and the actors strike. That means that The Rock's not going to be as busy. And if that ends up going enough into this whole thing where they end up thinking, well, you know what, we could do The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, we can finally get it. That could push off all the Cody stuff. We could be right back to, well, the World Heavyweight Championship is the same, right? Doesn't that count? Kind of, sort of, maybe.
I mean, you could, theoretically, but that doesn't change the fact that this dude is not, he's not saying that at all in interviews.
Right. But they could backtrack on that, just the same as how they just say bullshit for a lot of other things. I mean,
no, they can say bullshit. I'm saying Cody will absolutely not.
You don't think that they would just tell him, well, you got to change your perspective and,
No.
warp it that way? Is like, it is finishing the story because it is the world championship and, whatever. And like, it wouldn't shock me. So I do think that coming out of this, it's not necessarily going to be like, okay, well, whoever wins at SummerSlam, we know what's happening at Mania because plenty things can change. But I do think that if they end up going with Finn Balor or with Damian Priest, that we're going to see that belt switch hands a couple times over the course of the next few months. If it's just Rollins, which I ultimately still thinking it's just going to be Rollins, then I think that they're holding it for Gunther. So at the end of the day, Rollins is my pick. We got Priest, we got Balor. Are you guys both going Balor?
I'm going Balor.
Yeah, I think it'd be silly for them to do anything other than have Balor win this.
So then let's go back around to one of the other non-title matches that's happening here. This is an MMA rules match, though. Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler. I'm going to echo the statements that I've said quite a bit over the past year or so. I have not liked Ronda's return at all. I haven't thought anything that she's done has been great. And I wish she didn't return. So I'm going to be happy to see her go. I want Shayna to beat the crap out of her and look like the Shayna that got messed up on the main roster. I want her to be Shayna from NXT. And maybe this is the way to get back to that. Maybe it's just a win. Maybe they end up screwing it up and it's like Ronda wins and she leaves anyway or something. But I think it has to be Ronda losing. And I want it to be definitive enough that Shayna looks like a star again. Very glad it's MMA rules.
Those cowards didn't book the fight pit, and I'm sad about it, but that's okay. I think Shayna should win, but I don't think it should be one-sided in any way. I think it should be a fight. I think give Ronda a good match on the way out, too. If she is on the way out. I mean, I know Meltzer supposedly said she gave him a hard out, but I want to put over for 1 second the video packages that we saw on Monday Night Raw, because we have said it so much on this open podcast, but if you're going to do a match with not a lot of story, the way you get it over is by really strong video packages and seeing people train and talking about why it means so much to them. Mm-hmm. And Shayna and Ronda did a phenomenal job. Whoever directed it did a phenomenal job. This match feels more special than almost anything on this card because of those packages. Now,
they did a great job being able to be like using footage from their MMA career and everything and just kind of doing what they should do for most of the video packages. Let's be honest.
And even Shayna making sense out of the whole, listen, I still stand by, like nobody was ever going to beat us. But I just decided I didn't want to do any more years as her sidekick.
Mm-hmm. It's not the best explanation, but it's better than something.
But it's still way better than because yeah. So I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of how they built it. I really hope that it's a special match for both of them, and I think maybe this is the start of a path that sees Shayna win the Royal Rumble. That's an early call, but I'll say that for right now.
I mean, nobody would be happier than I would if this was the catalyst for the return to the NXT version of Shayna Baszler that was like captivatingly dominant across all of her run as women's champion. So I do hope that is the direction they end up leaning towards, and Ronda Rousey being a close friend of Shayna Baszler would try and put her over as strongly as she possibly can on the way out, if that is indeed where she is heading. So yeah, I think would be there's no other decision other than saying that Shayna Baszler is going to win this match. I'm not super keen on the MMA rules aspect of it. I kind of just want it to be a match. I think that putting the rules thing onto it means that they're going to do worked MMA. And I guess they're both former MMA fighters, so maybe they can make it work, but the vast majority of worked MMA matches that I've seen in pro wrestling tend to suck. So I think and nothing from Ronda's most recent run gives me the indication that this match won't suck as well. So, yeah, this is probably the thing that I'm least looking forward to on the entire show. And just hope that they do the right thing, put Shayna over, and Ronda's out of the company.
Can't believe we didn't get the Becky Lynch match. That sucks so hard. Anyway, moving on. What's the next match, Tony?
Oh, there's so many we could talk about when it comes to like how come we didn't get when it comes to the 4 horsewomen and all. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre getting another shot at the Intercontinental Championship against Gunther. This is pretty much just, hey, look at that. Remember how they had a good match? Let's do it again. And look, they're going to have another good match. It is lazy. It is something that they haven't put a whole lot of effort into, even when it comes to like just reheating the feud. Like McIntyre wasn't there this week, so Gunther was involved with Chad Gable more than anybody else and all. Now, look, I liked the Chad Gable match, but it kind of makes me want Chad Gable versus Gunther a little bit more than Drew McIntyre versus Gunther. It's a little, they're kind of just taking a detour and just, let's be honest, doing what we've said before. They're going, yeah, everybody knows that these two will have a good match, so fuck it, just watch the goddamn pay-per-view and shut your mouth. That's basically what they're saying. And they're going to have a good match. Gunther's going to lose the title after he beats Honky Tonk Man's record, I'm hoping, so he needs to beat Drew McIntyre here and give him the amount of time that they need to wail in each other. It's going to end up being a fun segment.
The reality is Gunther could lose it right now, and it's still wild that he'd be like number 3 of all time, of all the years of the IC title. But he needs to break that record. And as much as I like Drew, I don't like him that much. To say, let's, cut Gunther off and start a Drew McIntyre run. Gunther needs to get through September 8th.
Yep, I have no doubts to suggest that this is going to be a great match because the two people involved, and it will be probably the most physical match on the entire show. So saying something when there's both Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar and a tribal combat match going on in the match.
And an MMA rules match.
Oh, I have no doubt that's not going to be physical at all. But I think that, if it's anything like Ronda Rousey's last MMA rules match, it's only going to go for like 30 seconds anyway.
But it was physical.
I think that, and yes, Gunther's going to win. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it just to see how much they beat the shit out of each other beforehand. So yeah, Gunther wins. Should be a good match.
Do you think it's better than the 3-way at Mania or better than Clash of the Castle?
It'll be hard for them to top both of those ones. I'd probably say no because I think Sheamus is a better worker than McIntyre is.
I'm going to say the Sheamus Gunther thing is still going to be the top out of all of it. But they should.
I'm going to go with Mania still being. Yeah. I loved that match so much.
So then we got one more match to talk about here. Tribal Combat for the Undisputed WWE Universal Championship. Roman Reigns defending against Jey Uso. This is your perspective of, are you in the, yes, it's just going to be Roman Reigns and let's move on, it's not going to happen, shut up mentality that like I am? Or are you sucked into the drama of, but it could be Jey, everybody? Because it's pretty much 50-50, the responses that I'm seeing. Either people are like, man, this is what it's been building toward. It's a 3-year story and the culmination is finally happening at SummerSlam. It's the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. And who better than Jey to beat Roman and become the tribal chief and all that?
Cody Rhodes.
Or the cynical group that's like, yeah, but he hasn't beaten those other records yet, and it's clearly not going to be Jey. I am very much in the, it's not going to be Jey, everybody, tied up at camp.
So, first of all, this has been a really nice, fun story. And like any TV show, there's some terrible filler episodes along the way. But this is been a really good story. I will say that, yes, I think it is Roman, because for me, Jay isn't enough. But I could see this being the opposite of the Cody story, where people were so sure that Cody had to finish the story that how could you do anything else? Jay is just as close to that. There's a story to be finished here, and not to read too much into these things, but if you want to look at it from this perspective, Roman ain't advertised for shit after this show. Not Spectacle, not Payback, not Fastlane, not even Survivor Series. So there is that perspective as well. If it isn't Jay, I just wonder, like, okay, now what do you do? Because how do you, keep everybody away from each other? How do you move on with this story? It does kind of feel like this is the best ending, but the idea of Jey Uso being world champion doesn't
make sense. Yeah, it doesn't.
Because in all fairness, I genuinely felt like the story with them is the Usos, and they are the best tag team to have come through WWE, and they solidified that by headlining with the tag titles at WrestleMania. I felt like their story finished, but they have done a really good job of making it seem like, no, we did. The story we were telling was building Jay, and they've done it. Now, then I go, are we going to fucking see Jimmy turn on Jay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I don't want that either. I genuinely don't know of a situation where I'd be all right with moving on from this outside of Jay puts up a good fight, but Roman gets him in the end. And I think on August 1st, 2023, that's what I'll lock in right now. I'm going to say Jay puts up a great fight. Jimmy even helps him a little bit, but Roman is just not ready to give up the throne.
Yeah, I think that they've done a successful job of making people believe that Jay could beat Roman Reigns. And they've told a strong enough story ever since, I'd say, like, in the build-up to Night of Champions. Pretty much since then, they've done very good work in building up this story and making it feel like a really, really hot main event that everyone should be tuning in to see. And to be fair, this is what the story that everyone's tuning in to watch WWE for at the moment anyway. So, yeah, it's worthy of its main event slot, and I'm interested to see how Tribal Combat really works. I imagine it'll just be like an ODQ match with some vaguely stereotypical items around ringside.
Correct.
If anything.
Yeah. But I think that the way that my mind is going, like, you can't bet against Roman at this point in time. I don't think that Jay is strong enough to be, as an individual character, to be a world champion. But at the end of the day, regardless of the fact that Roman has held it for as long as he has, titles in WWE don't actually mean that much in terms of credibility. Like, you don't really need to be worthy of a title to be given a title, one way or another. So it's not out of the question they decide to give it to him for a little while and have Roman come back with a vengeance and win it back. But I think that the likely scenario will be that Jay gives it everything, Jimmy gets involved, Solo gets involved. Like, there's a lot of brawling around, as a typical Roman Reigns match would be. Roman is able to just outlast Jay, and then I think that they show kind of a begrudging, not so much respect, but like the story's over, and then they go their separate ways and like deal with the fallout. Roman now just with Solo and Paul, but still with the title, but his grip over it weakening due to the fact that he no longer has the same number of people with his back looking out for him. and Jimmy and Jay maybe take a little bit of a break and then return with a renewed intensity towards winning the tag titles or being their own, at least they're being their own separate entity outside of the bloodline. So yeah, that's what I'm going. Roman wins, but there's no reuniting. There's no turn on between the Uso brothers. It's like just pretty much Roman outlasts his brother in a hard fought match, and then they just go their separate ways.
Wouldn't shock me if they do the Jimmy Uso thing. Wouldn't shock me if they end up just being like, okay, well, Roman definitively won, so now they all fall back into line. It sounds like a cop-out answer, but there's no other way to phrase it than this. Once this happens, we're going to know exactly what the whole purpose of this was. Like, I don't think this is going to be a scenario where this ends in some sort of confusion and then they continue the story. I think it's going to end and we're going to see why they decided that they needed to do this. Whether it's to get them all back in line and to just be like, okay, they wanted to tell the story of the Usos screwed up at Mania and now you need to kind of have tension and we can do more in bloodline feuding and now we're back to the status quo, or that they specifically wanted to get the Usos out of the bloodline. One way or another, we're going to settle on something. But I think it still is going to be Roman as champion. So I am not anticipating a title change whatsoever. If they do it, look, crazier things have in fact happened. People have won championships out of absolutely nowhere. Jey Uso would not be the lowest ranked person to ever win the WWE championship, but I don't think it's happening.
But if it does, are you good with it?
Yes and no. I'm good with it in the sense that I could understand that this would be potentially why they didn't do the Cody thing. And that maybe they thought, yeah, but you know what? We can come back to the Cody thing. We really want to tell this bloodline story. But if their idea is to just have Jey hold it until like Payback, lose it back to Roman and just be like, okay, well, we did it to get everybody to go, and then we're going back to the status quo, then I'm going to think it's pointless. So it'll depend on if they end up doing that, how they follow it up. And I don't think that becomes like, okay, well then Jay's defending that belt at Mania. Like he would lose that before Mania anyway.
All right, I have to ask, just because I feel like they still want it. Rock, this is the fighting of the family. Like we're in Ford Field, former site of a WrestleMania.
Do you think maybe The Rock costs Roman?
No, I think like Roman's like, I told you I'm the one in the family. Match is over, yada yada, and then
The Rock comes out, and then they go, oh man, you can't wait to see those two in a couple months.
In fucking Philly. See you later.
Could very well happen. And then it's even more so an idea of everybody just goes, oh, okay, well then no wonder Roman's not fighting for the next couple months because nobody's going to fucking care, you know? And then they go, the U.S. title's on the line though. Huh? How about that?
At the very least, I'll say this. I do enjoy the shows when there's so many different paths you can take. And while some would be a little more of a letdown than others, it's at least nice to know, hey, you know, they've done a good enough job that if Jey Uso, of all people, became world champion, it wouldn't be the craziest thing. You know?
That's more interesting than when it's just, okay, well, we know what's going to happen. Can we just move forward?
When it's Roman, look, I love Big E, but when it's Roman versus Big E and you're like, all right, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't deny that.
Like, but I'm looking forward to the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this story ends once and for all.
So positives and negatives. We're going to find out what happens with SummerSlam, of course, on Saturday night. Have a post show immediately following to talk about what went down, if we got new champions, if we got any big surprises or anything along those lines. All that stuff will be broken down on the post show. Be sure to follow us and subscribe and stay tuned for that and join us for the live chat and everything. And, you can tell us what you think immediately following that and all. Make sure that you are also paying attention to everything else that's happening on smarkoutmoment.com. Of course, also pay attention to the Blue Brand over on fanboysanonymous.com for everything that might be happening there. Maybe some fan tracks. It would be not fan announce tables, fan tracks. My God, I keep stumbling over that. More fan tracks coming potentially this week. Also, of course, check out the Blueprint Project. Those things I've mentioned a million times before. If you don't know what it is by now, let me know. I'll explain it in more detail. Also, just go to the link tree, amangotree.com, and you'll see all sorts of different things that you can follow and like and subscribe and be a part of in one fashion or another, including my personal accounts at Tony Mango. And make sure you're following Rob and Callum as well.
Yep, follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. Check out my writing on Fightful. Sean Ross Sapp will be in Detroit, I believe, for SummerSlam, so there's some cool stuff coming up there. And yeah, just keep supporting, and we thank you for it. Callum, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Weekmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday over on smartcommand.com. Check out the Fantasy League because things will be, they'll be picking up some of the majority of the points that will get this entire section leading up to SummerSlam because you get plenty of points for pay-per-view weeks. And on the night as well, we'll be figuring out who wins the prediction contest, and based on that, who will be able to maybe make some additional tweaks and changes to their roster in order to benefit them moving forward. And at SummerSlam, we'll add some new people to our teams as well, and so we'll be full on to the stretch to. I'm not going to count Superstar Spectacle as the next breaking point for it. Payback will probably be the next big one that we make a change on. But stay tuned for that. We'll have some updates coming your way post SummerSlam.
Which, by the way, screw you, Gable Stevenson. It's a bit of a draw. Come on, man. Just drafted you because I thought you were going to beat Baron Corbin. So yeah, SummerSlam coming up. We, of course, also have another round of the hot tags in the meantime. So on Friday, we'll be breaking down all the different other stories that are happening in the world of pro wrestling and talking about the recap stuff from the other TV episodes and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you then. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.